Okay, let's read about Matisse. We'll do this book, which is a biography about him, and then we'll do a fun fictional story about Matisse based on a true story. Okay, Henri Matisse from France. Henri Matisse was one of the most important painters of the 20th century. He said he wanted his artwork to give people pleasure and be soothing, kind of like a comfortable armchair you can rest in after a hard day at work. This is one called The Goldfish, a painting of his, and guess what? We have a reproduction of it right on the wall. What a coincidence. You can see his bright, beautiful colors and the details that he put in and the patterns, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Henri Matisse's greatest works do just what he wanted. He perfectly balanced simple shapes and beautiful colors. His paintings seem to make you feel good all over. And I think that's why my mom wanted to introduce me to his great work. Sometimes Henri added decorative lines and colorful patterns to his paintings. He often let the plain white canvas show through in spots to give his colors a bright, sparkling feel. Henri Matisse was born in the north of France at Le Cateau Cambrésis in 1869. Unlike most great artists, Henri didn't show the least bit of interest in art while he was growing up. This is very unusual. His parents owned a general store that sold seeds, grain, and household goods. His father expected him to either work in the store or become a lawyer when he grew up. Henri ended up going to law school, but he found it really boring. Actually, I saw one of his notebooks from law school, and he did all kinds of doodles on the sides. He really wasn't interested in his studies. He was interested in doodling. It wasn't until he was 20 years old he discovered how much he loved art. While Henri was recovering from a very serious illness called appendicitis, his mother gave him a box of paints so he would have something to do. Remember, just like Frida Kahlo, when she had that accident and her mother gave her those paints and put the mirror above her, and she did all those self-portraits. So sometimes an accident could turn out to be a good thing. This was the most important moment in Henri Matisse's life. Suddenly, he was no longer bored. Henri found out he loved to paint. After he got better, he got a job as an assistant lawyer. But he took art courses early in the morning before work. Soon he was spending more and more time drawing and painting. He even painted flowers on the legal documents he was supposed to file away. It didn't take long for him to decide to become a full-time artist. But do you think his parents were happy about his decision? No. Lila, what do you think? Do you think his parents were happy?
No.
No. They wanted him to be a lawyer. They thought it was a more practical profession. His father was especially upset. But he was excited, and he finally talked his parents into letting him study art at a famous school in Paris, France. Because he hadn't become interested in art until he was an adult, he had a lot of catching up to do. He worked very hard studying all the things he would need to know to be a good artist. He learned about things like figure drawing. Oh, and that's so funny. Jones, you just did a figure of a person. That's so funny. He learned about things like figure drawing, perspective, and composition. During his time, art schools taught students to paint in a style that people were used to seeing. And these schools believed the rules shouldn't change. They had to draw carefully drawn figures and objects in dark colors. Although he enjoyed these works, he kept thinking there was something he might be able to do to freshen his paintings. He had a rough time at art school. He failed some exams, he didn't get along with his teachers, but fortunately one of his teachers, Gustave Moreau, took an interest in him, and he thought Matisse could be a great artist one day. Gustave encouraged Henri to try new things and use his imagination. Henri Matisse often traveled to find new and interesting things to paint. He usually went to places that were bright and sunny. On one trip, he met an impressionistic artist named John Russell, and he became very interested in the way Russell used bright dabs of color. And he started studying from other painters too, and as we saw with Picasso, for instance, Matisse and Picasso were very good friends. These artists knew each other and were influenced by each other. Very interesting. So he started studying with Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, and soon he began to add more colors to his paintings. And he had beautiful flecks of color to the flowers, the fruit, and the glassware. This was the beginning of a whole new style for Henri Matisse. He loved the new colors he kept in his paintings. He decided to leave art school and try painting on his own, and his colors became brighter and brighter. For a while, he used hundreds of brushstrokes in bright colors. Can you see these? It's called pointillism. He painted with a lot, hundreds and thousands of little points of color. Some of his artist friends thought his paintings were great. One of them, Paul Signac, liked the painting below so much he bought it from Henri. Oh, so this is an artist who started to sell his artwork during his life. Unlike, remember, Van Gogh, he was always so poor and not appreciated till way after he died. But Matisse was really popular. He wanted to experiment more with color and using larger shapes and thick lines to make his work more expressive. During the years he was experimenting with his art, he wasn't able to sell paintings, not at that point. But he was married, and he and his wife Amélie had 2 sons and a daughter. She did everything to help her husband. She modeled for him, she worked in a hat shop to make extra money, but they were poor and hungry, and he was often tempted to eat the fruit he used as the models in his paintings. Can you imagine that? He's doing a still life. That means that things are not moving, and he wanted to eat them. He was distracted by hunger. In 1905, he and some artist friends entered their latest colorful paintings in a show, and it was an uproar. People weren't used to such crazy colors. I see green in her face and all kinds of crazy colors. People were shocked. They thought these artists just slopped wild colors on the canvas. They were angry about Henri's painting of Amélie wearing a hat. They were so insulted they wanted to destroy the paintings. Can you imagine art having that effect on people? They wanted to destroy it. It looked so odd to them. A writer who saw the show named them the Fauves. It's a French word that means wild beast. It didn't sound like a nice name, but Henri and his friends didn't mind it. They felt like they were wild beasts. And the Fauve period, it was a short period. Then he started moving away from the bright colors he used and used calmer colors and decorative lines. In the joy of life, he created more soothing, dream world kind of painting. On one of his trips, he visited Algeria, a sunny North African country, and he saw lots of exciting designs on carpets, wallpaper, and people's clothes, and he added these decorative designs. So you can see them here, and in the goldfish painting, you can also see one of his designs. And that's when a wealthy businessman named Sergei Shukin bought Harmony in red. He loved everything Henri painted, and he asked him to do a large painting. This is the kind of work I saw when I went to Paris. These are huge in rooms from floor to ceiling. They're murals. Remember we had Diego Rivera's murals to show the history of the Mexican people? Well, Matisse liked to show people in large shapes and colors. Without using any of the carefully drawn figures, perspective, or natural colors, he was able to show the excitement and joy of life. Remember, he wanted people to feel pleasure and also be soothed by bright colors. The dancers seem like they're about to burst out of the picture at any moment. In his later years, when most artists slowed down, he started creating art that was fresher and more colorful than ever. And when he had trouble standing at his easel after he had a big operation, he started doing the cutouts. And you can see that one right up there. Let's show you that one. Now, in real life, that one is almost the size of this big window, and I had a print of it in my first home framed, and it was so exuberant and bright, and it gave me happiness every time I looked at it. So at the end of his life, he switched to a new art form that could be done sitting down. This is a new art form that revolutionized the way people do art. He introduced what these kids are doing, cut-out work. He cut shapes from brightly colored paper to make some of his most exciting art. He said it was like drawing with scissors and sculpting with color. He lived to be 84 years old, and by the time he died, his artwork was known all over the world. As an artist, he was much more than a painter, just like we were discussing with Picasso. He was famous for his sculptures and line drawings too. And in 1948, he designed an entire chapel. In 1948, he designed this chapel, and he used his talents to create stained glass windows, murals on the walls, floor designs, furniture, and even the priest's robes. It's incredible. So what we're going to do now, let me just show you this one. It's so sweet to be able to imagine these are room size. This one says, sometimes I'm still and quiet. Sometimes I want to dance. I also had a copy of this one. I love this one. Did you see this one, Lila Jones? Isn't that incredible? Imagine this, the size of that whole wall. Imagine it that big. A pony prancing kickety-kick. This reminds me of a little Italian cart. Or a bird swooping low, soaring high. Look at this repeat of the patterns. And so he did the geometrics. You like that one, Jones?
Yeah.
That's cool, isn't it? Imagine it being in the wall of your whole bedroom, waking up to those.
That'd be cool.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
And this is my favorite. I wave my arms and stretch, I sway. This I call the star catcher. I love this one. And I take a step and wiggle. Isn't that fun? The big figure with the colored shapes. And here's music makes me shimmy shake. You guys love this one. Music makes me shimmy shake. And bounce and flip. Look at this. It looks like he's kind of swimming and doing a somersault in the water. I rumble, tumble with a friend. I could see you doing this, Jones. And I run, high, and leap. Okay, so where is that other book I was going to read to the children? Oh, there it is, right next to you, Kurt, my videographer. This is a great book. This is called Matisse, the King of Color. And it's a fiction, which means that it's a story, but it's based on a true story. Monique climbed the steep hill and up some long steps in a huge building high above the town. The sign by the door said, Henri Matisse. It was like stepping into a multicolored jungle. Can you see this, kids? This is what his studio looked like.
Wow.
It was like stepping into a multicolored jungle. Birds flew from room to room. Plants grew as tall as trees. Hello, called a small voice. Is that the night nurse? Hello, Monsieur Matisse, said Monique. I have come to look after you. The old artist had a silver beard and twinkly glasses. He was recovering from a big operation, and the doctors said he would never paint again. He said, I feel a little bit better, but I would like you to read to me. So Monique chose a book. She read a long time, and she fell asleep. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. This is my very first job. And Matisse smiled. Look, I made a drawing of you. Then Matisse told her about his adventures in different lands. And soon Monique forgot it was dark outside. It was night outside. Matisse loved music, flowers, children, and he tied chalk to a long stick so he could draw his grandchildren on the ceiling. They keep me company when I can't sleep, he said. But the thing Matisse loved most of all that I relate to is color. Matisse loved color. He was always trying to find ways to make his paintings brighter and brighter. Some people called him the wild beast. Remember that word fauve, the French word wild beast, fauve? Because his colors were so crazy. Every evening, Monique climbed the hill to the jungle studio. Monique helped Matisse sit up and paint, and they became good friends. Matisse made a lot of pictures of Monique. You could see those in museums today. And he also did one with a mandolin, an instrument, on the chair. Look how much better I am, Matisse said. Thank you for looking after me, Monique. You have been like a grandfather to me, Monique said. Then she picked up her bag and walked out of the room. She thought she'd never see him again. And she went to school far in the mountains. But it was no ordinary school. She dressed in black and white. She was studying to be a nun. When the old man heard Monique had been a nurse, they gave her a bicycle and sent her to look after people who weren't well. Every day she cycled along the lane past a big empty house. The house had views right across the mountains to the sea. It was called the Dream. One afternoon in June, this is an amazing coincidence, Monique saw that a new owner was moving into the Dream house. The new owner loved birds, loved cats, and the new owner was Henri Matisse. So their lives cross again. Matisse was delighted to see Monique again. But you were all in black and white, and I love color. Well, first I put on some music, jazz is best. Now I paint big sheets of paper as bright as I can. Then with hands as quick as butterflies, Matisse cut 100 dancing shapes like these kids are doing. And soon they were pinned up everywhere on the Wall of Dreams. Maybe I should call this the Wall of Dreams and keep it that way. I wonder if my husband would like that. But we couldn't raise the drape again. I have been painting too, said Monique. She showed him a tiny picture. It was a design for a stained glass window. We could have made this with real stained glass as high as this room, said Matisse. But Monique laughed. The nuns don't even have a chapel. You can't put stained glass windows in a garage. And it was nearly dark when Monique ran home. The nuns would be worried, and Monique was covered in splashes of color. Come back soon, Matisse said. The next time Monique called, she found Matisse excited. Monique, you have been so kind to me that I'm going to build a chapel up in the mountains. Not a gloomy dark church, but a chapel that will be a house of color. It will be my present for you. You know, kids, you can go to visit that chapel today. It's in France. Matisse asked Monique to build a model like a big doll's house. Look at this. They actually, Jones, Lila, look at this. They worked together to build a model of the chapel because unlike the black and white that she wore in the dark chapels, he wanted them to have a bright one. So look at this. Matisse made wonderful drawings for the chapel walls. He even designed the robes for the priests to wear. The priests had never worn robes like that before. Yeah. The chapel took a very long time to build, and Matisse became tired. He asked the carpenter to put wheels on a bed and a tray for his paints. And remember with Frida Kahlo, when they finally had a one-woman exhibit for her, she was so ill she had to have her bed put on wheels, and that's how she was at the exhibit. Just like Matisse. It's so funny, such a coincidence. At last, the workmen began to put up the chapel walls. Their bangs and shouts echoed through the mountains. The chapel had a bright blue roof, a golden bell on a curly tower. "This will be more like a circus than a chapel," said the old nuns. Ooh, they didn't like it at first. One gray day, when everything was nearly finished, Monique pushed Matisse along the lane to look inside. Monique was surprised. Everything seemed to be shiny white. It didn't look like a house of color at all. Perhaps the nuns had won, and the chapel would be black and white, just like their clothes. But the King of Color, that was Matisse's nickname, the King of Color, had one more trick to play. He had been working away in his studio designing windows for the chapel, using colored paper to cut out the blue and green shapes of color. 17 stained glass windows. Look at this, these huge stained glass windows that he designed. 17 of these were made in a factory exactly as Matisse had planned. A big truck climbed slowly up the mountain, and the workmen lifted them carefully into place. They drove back down the mountain, and the chapel was finished. Monique got up early. It was her turn to wake the others, and today was a very special day. It was the opening of the Matisse Chapel. There would be lots of visitors, and she wanted everything to be ready. Look what she saw when she walked inside. This is so different than a traditional chapel or church. The morning sun rose over the mountains, and a bright ray of sunlight fell across the darkened windows. Very slowly, the room began to fill with colored light, and it crept across the floor and onto the white walls. Then, like a magic painting, the black and white world was filled with color. Wow. Monique felt as if she was floating in a multicolored sea. Matisse was painting with light. Monique stood still for a moment, and then she went to wake the others. And high on the blue roof, the golden bell began to chime. It echoed across the mountains to the sea. And as the sunlight filled his bedroom, Matisse heard the sound, and he smiled. "Now I can rest," he said, King of Color. Wow, I love that story, and I'm hoping one day to go to visit that chapel. Okay, so now we're actually going to get to work on projects like Lila and Jones have worked on. So the only things you need, kids, you need a piece of paper. It can be white, it can be any color, but it should be a solid color. And you need a glue stick, or Elmer's glue, or even tape, and you need a scissor. And then you need to find paper. It could be leftover newspaper, magazines, it could be colored paper, any kind of paper, right? So look what these kids have done. So Jones, tell us about yours.
I just was trying to copy the person that you made, or
that Matisse had made, yeah,
up there. And then
you did a figure in the center. Nice.
And then I just wanted to add some like waves to act like it was like the ocean.
Beautiful.
And then this one kind of looks like a candy cane, but I just wanted to add it like that.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make this one kind of different with like a weird shape to the end of it, which has like cut out like spikes to it.
Yeah.
And then some circle
to add to the composition.
To add to the color, because they're
beautiful.
And then some like mountains up there, but they're like upside down, so it's like not really.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. And I like the composition and the selection of colors. Composition is the placement of things on the page and the balance of color. Lila, tell us about yours.
I'm kind of relating it to my sports.
Oh.
Like my soccer, which I love a lot. So I've been like, I did a person, like Jones said, like that one. And then I did like cut out weird pieces of grass and like a deformed soccer ball. And then now I'm just adding color and like a background to it.
Beautiful. wonderful, kids. Would you say this is a hard project to do? Easy, fun? What is it?
Probably fun
Yeah.
and exciting because you get to design whatever you like, but it's also kind of like Matisse's.
And what I love is that it's not that difficult to make things look beautiful. So
Yeah.
even though he was an advanced artist and his work is fabulous, we can make things that look kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Here's mine. I did this a couple of years ago and I still like it.
Yeah.
Now the black has faded a little bit. It was on black construction paper, but I think everybody can do a Matisse cutout. So why don't you get started and do your Matisse cutout now? And before I say goodbye, a good stretch. I've been sitting for a long time. Everybody remember, do your stretches, then one side, the other side. I hope you're using your yoga books, and I hope you're doing some coloring and having a great summer. See you next video from Miss Joan of Art, and a big thank you to Lila, to Jones, and the videographer, who you don't see, but his name is Kurt, and he's a great guy. Thank you, Kurt. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.